niġu bil-PC tagħna u l-monitor fih daqsiex għas missieri ma kien jifilħu. Ħanerġa' ninsa għax weħlet li ma nistax kif ukoll. Wasal iż-żmien li nħolqu programm dedikat tal-esports. Programm fejn nitkellmu fuq ħafna affarijiet, edukazzjoni, saħħa, l-industrija tax-xogħol, però l-iktar ħaġa importanti li nippromovu l-esports pajjiżna għaliex intom kapaċi. Mela tinsewniex, eSports Plus.
Okay, we proceed to the start.
Niġu bil-PC tagħna u l-monitor fih daqsiex, għas missieri ma kien jifilħu. Ħanerġa' ninsa għax weħlet li ma nistax kif ukoll. Wasal iż-żmien li nħolqu programm dedikat tal-esports. Programm fejn ħanitkellmu fuq ħafna affarijiet, edukazzjoni, saħħa, l-industrija tax-xogħol, però l-iktar ħaġa importanti li nippromovu l-esports pajjiżna għaliex intom kapaċi. Mela tinsewniex, Esports Plus.
We're 3 rounds into what is an incredible championship run so far. But the last 3 rounds take place in a span of just 12 days. Today is the first of those 3 races that come forward, and it's a track which is very tight and very technical compared to the other circuits that are out there on the calendar. It is one fantastic run through Kent as we take ourselves to Brands Hatch for the 4th round of the Multinational GT3 Esports Championship 2022, fueled by Enemed, racing on Assetto Corsa Competizione. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone watching around the world, be it TVM Sport, Motorsport.tv, ESTV, the Esports Television Network, and to those who are watching, of course, on YouTube and on Facebook as well. My name's Jake Sperry. Kieran McGinley is along with me here today. And Kieran, we come into this fourth round of the championship with one driver starting to stamp down that authority, a full race distance worth of points ahead of his nearest competitor. It's been all about how Dean Vella has been up near the front and has put everybody else on notice.
Yeah, hasn't it just? I mean, he's got a strong stranglehold on this championship lead at the moment, and he'll be looking to try and extend that as we head to Forcombe in Kent for another night's worth of racing. 2 sets of points up for grabs for those winners and etc. for everybody else. But I'm looking forward to absolutely getting stuck into this one.
I absolutely am as well, and I cannot wait. And the reason why these drivers are driving at this point in time is for one very important reason. This is a national championship for Malta. The top prize for winning isn't just any old prize. It's the chance to drive in the FIA Motorsport Games in 2022. So that is definitely in the back of the mind for all of these drivers, that they go around and they try and get the biggest result that they possibly can. But let's talk about some of the pitfalls today that this Brands Hatch circuit can give. For what is a British track, it's got a lot of elevation change to it. There's a lot around this circuit, Kieran, that really catches a driver out. Most notably, as we run the full layout here today, it's the run through the Hawthorne Bend all the way up to Stirling's, which I think needs to pay special attention. Those right-handers, one after another, do really stick out as 3 very different corners with very similar profiles.
They do as well. And not only are they sort of fast right-handers, it's also very deceivingly narrow. There is not a lot of margin for error. And if you do get it wrong on your left-hand side, there's grass, there's gravel, and the tyre barriers are not too far away. A very punishing section of the track. And one of my favourite parts of the track being the first corner, Paddock Hill Bend. That descent down the hill with the gravel trap on your left as you then head up Pilgrim's Rise up towards Druids. Such a fantastic section of track, but also a very easy place to overcommit and understeer and head yourselves a one-way ticket to that gravel trap. This track has a little bit of everything. I think the drivers are going to love lashing the cars around here, as I'm sure they have through their practice laps. But tonight here, around this unforgiving circuit, let's see who can come out on top.
Druids wasn't actually in the original plans for Brands Hatch. It only came in 1954 in terms of a corner. So really nice to see how that run up to Druids, that up and back down the hill, essentially puts on the first signage point of you've managed to get this first section of the lap working fantastically. We did touch on the championship up at the top. It is Dean Vella who's got control of that as things stands today. He's got 143 points to his name here, Kieran, and he's been doing so with, yes, amazing pace and picking up some really great victories, but he's also been up there near the front having to deal with Sheldon Muscat. And here's a little look and understanding of how they compared last time out. Qualifying was very much a case of Sheldon Muscat being the faster for the first time and really showcasing what he had available. But in that third round, it didn't go all okay for Sheldon Muscat and for Dean Vella. That's why he's got that lead right now of 32 points. And it does show because it is 25 points for a race win.
Yeah, it really, really does. And just a tale of the 2 races from last time out, you can see the consistency percentage, which is a percentage that's given to you by Assetto Corsa Competizione once you finish the race to give you an idea of how consistent your lap times were. And those are some very, very high numbers. These 2 gladiators going into battle will give us the most consistent lap times they can. They've shown that time and time again. And last time out, they showed that as well. I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do at Brands Hatch, a track which is notable for, especially with these GT cars, a lack of overtaking opportunities. Qualifying here is going to be of the utmost importance. It's up to the drivers to make sure they are as far up the grid as possible, because in these sprint races, although they are sprint races, very short, high-octane races, there are very limited overtaking opportunities at Brands Hatch. So they've got to bear that in mind heading into today's races.
Yeah, they really do. The only 2 places you'd look at maybe is the run down into Paddock Hill Bend and the run through the Pilgrim's Drop over towards the Hawthorne Bend. Those are the 2 places I would say that are the prime places to get an overtake done today. But it's also worth talking about, this is a championship where adaptability is also king in terms of how drivers go about their way forward and make sure they score as many points as possible, because the car has changed from week to week to week, and it's going to be the same here today. They're driving for the first time the McLaren 720S GT3. Of course, all GT3s for the course of the season, but the 720S, I would say for here, a British car on a British track. I wouldn't necessarily say, though, Kieran, that it's the most suited car-to-track combination. I always imagine the McLaren as being a very, very quick straight-line car in comparison to this being a very technical racetrack.
Yeah, the driver's going to have a handful on themselves tonight, making sure they can tame the beast as much as possible heading around Brands Hatch. It's a very narrow circuit, and the McLaren isn't exactly the most narrow and the most agile car to bring and lash around a circuit. So it's going to be a real chapter of who will be the bravest to get the fastest lap and really wrangle it out of the McLaren tonight. But I've got to be honest, a McLaren around Brands Hatch, I mean, whoever was looking at the schedule and decided that was going to be a thing, hats off to you, because the driver's going to have a handful on them tonight.
Yeah, they really are, and they are going to be battling around a circuit that really is going to be difficult to get correct, and they'll be down at the World Pro Racing Arena very, very soon, looking to get themselves into practice and then qualifying, and then the 2 races here tonight. And those 2 races are going to be really important, Kieran, because you got that first race, which is decided by qualifying, and then you go out and you set those times. It's 20 minutes to try and get yourself up as far forward as possible. But then again, it's the second race, which is exactly the same as the first in every single way. Everything gets reset back to how it was and go again. So if it went well in the first race, you've only got to replicate that. If it didn't go well in the first race, well, you've really got to make a meal out of what little time you have left to try and make those overtakes. So I think it's going to be a really interesting battle when it comes to the 2 races today, and really a second opportunity for drivers is often what is needed to really reassituate and find form and find rhythm and momentum, especially as it's going to be momentum based for the last 3 rounds of the championship.
And having that second race there is a real incentive to the drivers that if it doesn't quite go to plan in race number 1, well, you can treat the second race as a case of vindication. Bring yourself back up to the standings, bring yourself back up to speed, reset button set is hit, and you can go again and try and score maximum points. I mean, it's much easier said than done, of course, when you're in the heat of battle. The adrenaline is still pumping through. You've got that idea that, you know, you can try and score as many points as possible. If it doesn't go too well, consider it a recovery drive. Make sure you try and get up the order as much as possible. You never know what could happen up ahead of you. It's always worth staying in a race, no matter how bad it's going.
I absolutely agree. And of course, live stewarding available here on this series as well, as is traditional with World Pro Racing. So everyone knows what the letter of the law is. They go out and they try and find as much as they can. And these drivers have had to really work to get themselves up to a point of contention where they feel like they've got everything in and around the right areas where they can go out and try and showcase. It's not just about the battle at the top. It's a really strong battle in the mid-pack as well. And a lot of drivers will look at it and go, oh, I'm third and there's only a major top 1 prize. What's the point in racing? It's the point that these drivers now do have a mid-pack scrap, and that the more that they race in a situation like this and get themselves into this mentality of big races and effectively a big race mentality, that they're only going to improve, they're only going to get better, and competition is only going to get more fiercer the more these events continue to go on.
Yeah, with the top prize being a chance to represent Malta at the Motorsport Games, you need the cream of the crop. This is an environment where you need to be on top level in order to progress and make yourself known. This is trying to find the driver that's going to represent the entire nation of Malta. So no pressure for our drivers here. But as you said, such a tight midfield from 3rd place downwards. I mean, you've got Dylan De Bono, you've got Nigel Mifsud separated by a single point in the championship. So it's mightily close between those two. And with 50 points on offer for our drivers, and of course a bonus point for not only fastest lap but driver of the day, that's going to be one to watch out for later on. That is all going to be up for grabs for our drivers. So a maximum really of 52 points heading into tonight. That could still bring you straight back up into the championship fight. And if Dean Vella doesn't have the greatest race of all, there's still an opportunity by the end of the evening for the championship lead to change. So if you're going in with a big gap, just remember there's still 50 points every single time we go to these sprint races. It's far from over.
And of course, they'll have to deal with the 2 races that come along after this one at Brands Hatch, which will be, of course, at the Circuit Paul Ricard. It's just 7 days from today. And then on the Wednesday, just 5 days after Paul Ricard, it'll be Mount Panorama Bathurst that ends out the season as Wednesday becomes the battleground that we keep our focus on. But it's Friday tonight, and it's going to be some great racing, and I'm sure we're going to see that. Just a waiting word for when we can go down to the World Pro Racing Arena, see our drivers as they will look to try and get themselves all sorted and situated. But Kieran, these drivers now know that this is a track where there is limited opportunity. So how do you, as a driver, look at a track like Brands Hatch in terms of where to pick and choose the moments and how to set up a driver to make an overtake?
Well, I mean, as you obviously said, there's very limited overtaking opportunities. Your best chances will be in towards Druid, so it's making sure Paddock Hill Bend is really nailed down to a T. But this is a circuit all about momentum. You drop a little bit of momentum in just one place, it's going to affect the entire rest of the lap. If you get Paddock Hill Bend slightly wrong, that affects you all the way in towards Pilgrim's Rise and towards Druids. And if you don't get Surtees right, well, you've got that long straight, then towards Pilgrim's Drop, where you carry the speed in towards Hawthorne Bend. So what I would probably say to the drivers is make sure you keep your consistency high. Try and get those lap times as close to each other as possible. Keep the momentum up. And really, when you think about an overtake, you've got to try and make sure that you go for a move that you know you can try and make stick. You go side by side if you need to, but don't cost yourself that crucial momentum, because you'll just fall into the clutches of the driver behind. It's their turn then to try and get past you. And if your momentum's not as high as it should be, they might have a chance at just these limited overtaking opportunities to just stick a nose up the inside. Keep consistent, keep that momentum up, and obviously make sure you try and nail your quali lap as best as you possibly can. The higher up the grid you are, it seems silly to say, but the higher up the grid you are, the better chances you have of fighting your way to the top of the order.
And that's very true when it comes to Dean Vella. He's been up there at the very top of the championship, and part and parcel of that has been the way he's qualified. He hasn't qualified lower than second all season long, and that's really been a showcase to understand where quick drivers find it is that the stopwatch does not lie. If you've got a quick natural pace over the course of one lap, you have that opportunity to go out then and say, hey, look, I'm the quickest driver over one lap. I'm going to be up at the front of the race. And traditionally, that's where the least amount of trouble happens when you're at the front, because you get to dictate where on the opening lap you can go out and attack. And with the rolling starts that they have and the patience that they have to have off of these starts, the only driver that you're really worried about off of the get-go is the driver that's either on your inside or on your outside, depending on which circuit you're racing.
And one of the worst places to start a Brands Hatch is on the outside, because you're at the whim of the car on your inside and you're hoping they don't understeer. And really, there's not a lot of room between the curb, the slightly off the curb bit, and then there's just gravel all to your left-hand side. It's not very far at all on a narrow bit of circuit, and it's a lot narrower when you try and go through there 2x2, Noah's Ark style. It can get a little bit sketchy there, but the important thing is if you make it through Paddock Hill Bend, you've got the rest of the lap, you've got the rest of the race then. That is what the drivers will also have to keep in the back of their mind, that although it is these sprint races of 20 minutes each, and it does encourage drivers to try and get moves done as quickly as possible, your race can't be won at turn one, but it can certainly be lost.
Oh, it absolutely can. And I'm sure that drivers will be looking out at their races and thinking, well, if we can go out and survive the opening corner, survive the opening lap, then we are in with an opportunity to make a race out of it. And they're all on the same hardware, the same software, the same materials they've all got to play with. And all of the sim rigs that are there are exactly identical with the partners, some of which they're on screen. AMD, of course, GT Omega Racing, HyperX, all of them coming in and bringing together what is essentially a really strong palette. There's a little look at the World Pro Racing Arena. That's where they'll be racing today and looking to try and get as much as they can out of their results. And really, this closed feel here of this World Pro Racing Arena is something that is quite new to a lot of sim racing drivers, even though, you know, esports, for example, as a whole has been around for over a decade and a half, over 2 decades. and there's been LAN events all the time. When it's come to sim racing, that's been a lot less common in terms of this sim racing world. So when you have an accident, Kieran, and you can just walk 3 seats down, for example, and have a little bit of a conversation with the driver who's still driving, it really does put into perspective just how important a series like this is, and how important it is to effectively have those emotions at a calm.
And it's great to have these emotions on display as well, so long as they're kept in moderation. But this is a perfect example of build it and they will come. I mean, the scene is set, the Colosseum is ready for action. And I'm sure once the drivers are, I'm assuming, back from their briefing very, very shortly, then of course we'll get proceedings underway and see how our gladiators get on tonight. But yes, a fantastic facility. Very jealous of the drivers, actually. They get those beautiful bits of machines to play around with, and we get to watch on, Jake. I can't think of a better way to kick off the weekend.
I can't think of a better way either, and it is going to be a fascinating weekend's worth of racing, not just in the sim racing world, but you talk real world racing as well. There's so much that's going on, and there's always something to keep your eyes on and to keep a focus with as a year continues to progress, as we jump into the month of September and starts to gear up towards 2023 as well. So there is always that to keep in the back of the mind on top. But this, Kieran, now becomes a case of nervous waits and anticipation. Drivers will be looking at their practice time and thinking about how much they can really garner and gain from what they do. They have had the opportunity to go and put extensive practice in. This is the most practice that they will be able to have all season long due to the long break between round 3 and round 4. So which drivers do you feel like gain an advantage from being prepared, and what do you look at in terms of preparation for a race like this?
Well, it's a case of you can't practice enough. You'll get some drivers that will constantly put in those lap times whenever they are awake. You'll get other drivers who will put in maybe an hour a day just to freshen themselves up and keep themselves sharp. But sometimes you'll find that when you jump into a sim, you'll just have an off day where nothing seems to go right. The lap times just seem half a second off and you can't figure out why, no matter what you do to the setup, anything like that. Something's not quite clicking. The next day you jump on, you're setting the fastest laps you ever have on the first lap of the session you do. So it really can be that sort of volatile environment in yourself to make sure you get the lap times out. But I'm sure the drivers will have been focusing on making sure they are as consistent as possible, setting those lap times consistently, learning the lines, and making sure that the momentum stays high around a track that really demands that high momentum in order to be successful. And I think you've got to set some time aside as well for those low fuel runs, those high octane qualifying laps to see what you can really do. And the great thing about sim racing is you can make those mistakes and it's only your ego that's hurt. You can just press escape, come back to the pits in your practice session and try again. A brand new car is unveiled upon you. And that's great news for someone like me who probably can't make it 3 kilometers without just touching the wall very slightly. So it's great for me, but for our drivers, it does mean that if a mistake is made, what's the harm? They can just go out again.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all about now trying to figure out the next stage as they go forward. How do they go from putting a quick lap into a quick race? And that's where the practice comes in, because it's all right going out there and trying to put one lap together and try and do so cleanly. But if you can't string 5 corners together, you might be in a bit of trouble for one lap. You can't string 2 laps together, you might be in trouble for an entire race. And it's those mistakes that have to be dialed out, time in and time out. This is a track that has some very inviting areas to go and attack, especially the exit of Paddock Hill Bend, because you've got that small strip of runoff just before you get to the gravel, which really does invite drivers to push the absolute limits of what the track has available to it. But there's going to be other parts of the circuit where you go through. For example, Surtees is a very good corner to use as an example, where there is no margin for error on the exit because there's just grass and gravel, and it could very easily turn around at the drop of a hat. So you're sort of waiting for the places on track where you can attack. And would you say also there are places where you have to really respect Brands Hatch?
I think the track limits, I mean, the circuit, when you go there, has track cameras set up specifically along the Cooper Straight to watch out for that bit of curbing on the right-hand side, just as you exit Graham Hill Bend. And as soon as that fourth tyre goes over the line, they catch a photo of you, present it to you, and say, here's your penalty. There's no doubt about that. But although there are some track limits here that are going to have to be respected, the general thesis of Brands Hatches, well, if there are no track limits, then you can't really use track limits. There's bits of grass, especially going through the right-handers of Hawthorne Bend, Westmill Bend, Dingledale, which is one of the best corners you'll ever come across, through Sheens and then through Stirlings. Whilst undulation is there to try and help the drivers keep that momentum up, there's not much in the way of tarmac along the circuit. It's mainly grass and it's gravel beyond that. So it's a very punishing track, and you've got to be millimetrically perfect up towards the grass in order to maximize your lap times. And that is something that takes many, many hundreds of hours of practice to even make sure you get a lap where you can just use, quite literally, the entire circuit and no more.
Yeah, and everyone's going to be trying to use everything to their disposal. We can confirm we're almost at that point in time where we can jump down to the World Pro Racing Arena, get an understanding of the drivers. Justin Mifsud will be down there, of course, taking a little bit of a conversation with the drivers. They look to prepare themselves then for today's action. But Kieran, this is where you sort of now start to gear up and say, well, what do you have? And really, it's all about now, what can Sheldon Muscat do? Dean Vella's put a fantastic first 3 rounds together that has set the gauntlet down. And effectively, Sheldon's got to come out fighting. He's got to come out swinging and say, I can be better, I can be quicker, and I can go out there and score some points and take and chip away at the points as much as possible. If it's 5 points at a time, 6 points at a time, he's going to try and do everything in his power to make sure that he can close down what is a pretty sizable margin at this point, where you could even argue at this moment, 6 rounds to go, Sheldon Muscat wins every single race. It will come down to, firstly, the pole positions, but finishing second will just about claim it for Dean Vella.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you get to that point in the season where we've just come off of the longest break of the season. Maybe the drivers had a chance to press the reset button, have a situational discussion, a debrief, and discuss to themselves, well, how's the season gone so far? And what do I need to really step up for the second half of the season? And I think Sheldon Muscat will have done that. Look, he's a talented driver. We've seen it time after time here at World Pro Racing. He knows how to wrangle a performance when he really, really needs one. And tonight, boy, does he need one to size up against Dean Vella. I wouldn't rule out Sheldon Muscat here, pulling the rabbit out of the hat here and making this championship hunt very, very tight, heading towards the closing stages. But as you say, Dean Vella hasn't qualified lower than second place the entire season. He is going to be a tough driver to beat. I guess, Jake, there really is only one way to find out. And I am absolutely, I'm very excited to see what can happen between these two.
I am as well. For those of you watching, of course, with TVM Sport, with motorsport.tv, and as well with ESTV, the Esports Television Network. Welcome to coverage of the Multinational GT3 Esports Championship in 2022. There's work being done as well with the Malta Motorsport Federation. I think that's really important to touch upon at this moment in time here, Kieran, because it's not just about esports as a scene. It's about how esports as a scene is helping to develop the next stages of not only Malta, but the world as well, in terms of a new emerging industry, which really it's only been in the last 5 years where companies have really taken an eye to it and gone, oh, we could really do a lot with this brand new era, with everyone getting involved with gaming as a whole. And the Malta Motorsport Federation is certainly no exception to that. A burgeoning scene with Malta. They're getting a brand new track within the next 3 years, their first track in Malta. And on top of that, to partner up and marry up with esports in what is such an important strategy move for them, they're effectively trying to cultivate a youthful scene to say, when we have this brand new track that's coming along, it's going to be designed, we then have this opportunity to say, well, now we've got a great pool of drivers, a great pool of talent who have already proven themselves on a digital stage. They can go out then to a real world stage and say, this is just how good we can be, and we're developing a brand new culture here.
Absolutely, and that's the raison d'etre for the Malta Motorsport Federation, is to find the next Maltese drivers that can really take it to the next level and represent the country on a national stage. You're talking about, well, we head to sim racing now. We're finding the Maltese driver to represent the country at the FIA Motorsport Games, and hopefully from then on develop the motorsport scene in Malta to a point where we will have Maltese drivers in the feeder series working their way up the motorsport ladder. And well, the goal will be to have top level Maltese drivers in the world class championships right at the very top. And of course, we all want to see that here. And these are these first steps to getting onto that path. And well, it's been fantastic what they've done with the track coming in the next few years. It's a very exciting project to watch on and see how it all develops.
Yeah, so these drivers all know that there is a lot coming to them in the future of racing action that they've got. It is also worth noting here, ladies and gentlemen, that you can vote for your driver of the day, heading over to dotd.wpr.gg or driveroftheday.worldproracing.gg. You have the opportunity to vote up to 5 times with the votes that you have. You can vote for anyone, be it Andrea Rizzo, Dean Vella, Goran Andreevski, Dylan De Bono, Kirsten Beja, Jean-Louis Carao, Sheldon Muscat, Nigel Mifsud, Trejan Pavlovsky, and Daryl Martinelli. You can have that opportunity to go out there and give your favorite driver a bit of support. Or if you don't have a favorite, the driver that you believe is most deserving of driver of the day from their performance and the way that the results all end up. There is a championship point in the offing, or 2 championship points, I should say, for managing to pick that up. So there is certainly a lot that you can gather up if you can put together the right results in, and a great performance will make you maybe more likely to jump up in and get a chance of getting driver of the day sorted. So that's going to be something in the back of the mind, and that's also a part of the racing where the drivers have no control over how many points they get, because driver of the day is such subjective reward for it. So it might just be that drivers who are driver of the day might have themselves or might not have themselves a result that gets them first or second. It might not even mean that they guarantee themselves a top 5 finish, but if it's a really strong and clever result, drivers are going to get points.
Yeah, and that encourages drivers to not only, if they're having a bad day, to really put the hammer down and see how far they can go up, but it's also encouraging you at home to really pick out your drivers, see them flourish, and also be rewarded with those extra points. And it's something that the likes of Dean Vella and Sheldon Muscat can't really control. If they are leading from the front, of course, you can vote for them by how dominant they are. But if you spot someone in the field that is maybe, 9th to 4th or 9th to get themselves onto the podium, and you think that's worth a couple of points, well, absolutely, have your say. It's what it's there for. And it's something that the drivers, it's the only set of points they can't control. It's the set of points that you at home control. And, well, let's give you control and see what you can do with it, because that will and does have an effect on the championship. And who knows, those 2 points you award could have a huge effect when we get to round number 6 at Mount Panorama.
It could, in Mount Panorama. What a track that is to end out a season, because there is not always a guarantee that everyone finishes around there. It's one of the great street circuits of the world, and I do have a couple of friends actually that live in Bathurst, New South Wales, so hopefully I'll get a chance to stay with them once upon a time, and then hopefully get a chance to look at what is some amazing racing. But at the moment, it's about amazing racing here, and the amazing racing that we have had over the course of the racing action, the 3 rounds that we've had prior to the action that we've had here. We started off at Watkins Glen on the 22nd of July. We moved over. We had the Nürburgring and the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. So 3 tracks, 3 very different tracks to start, and 3 tracks really, Kieran, that opened up the season and said, okay, this is what we have going forward. We got the great all-round track in Spa. We got the Grand Prix style track, but with the endurance style chicanes in Nürburgring. And then Watkins Glen was a really fast flowing attack to start off the season. Brands Hatch is probably different to all of these circuits, and it is going to be a bit of a culture change in terms of how you go out and not only set up a car, but how you go out there and challenge this circuit, because you're looking to try and get as much, I would say, run off the exits of all of these corners.
It's narrow and it's unforgiving, and it's a circuit that the drivers haven't really had this season. Watkins Glen is also a track that's really momentum based, so that won't be an unfamiliar idea to these drivers. Again, at Watkins Glen, if you lose that slight bit of momentum, then you're going to be affected by the rest of the lap and possibly even to the next lap as well, such as the importance of momentum. And that's exactly the same here at Brands Hatch. It's one of the narrowest circuits we come to. We won't discuss Mount Panorama yet, but Brands Hatch so far is one of the narrowest circuits we've come across on the calendar. And whilst there is grass and whilst there is gravel, let me tell you, that's the last place you want to end up, especially when you're flying through the likes of Hawthorne Bend, through Westfield Bend, through Dingledale and through Sheens. The car, you want it to be on rails. You have to have the car on rails. And if you even lose that slight bit of momentum, well, there's going to be a whole train of drivers ready to try and pass you and size you up, heading on towards the first part of the next lap when you head up to Druids.
I tell you what, this is one of the few circuits as well out there in the world that really does follow the lay of the land in terms of how a track is designed. There isn't one bit out of place really in terms of how you go about trying to build a corner. I mean, Paddock Hill Bend is the sort of corner which puts the fear of God into a lot of drivers, because you turn in, you think it's okay, and then suddenly when you're about 2/3 of the way through the corner, the track just completely drops like it's a roller coaster. It's so unique, and there is so much undulation change around a track like Brands Hatch that you look around some of the corners. I don't think there's a single corner out there on the track which is completely, if you'd say it naturally, is a completely flat corner. And that means that every corner is its own unique challenge. You can never take any two corners the same way.
I think the corner with the least amount of undulation is probably going to be Druids. It's the most relatively flat part of the circuit, which also coincides with the slowest part of the circuit, the hairpin going in towards turn 2. And then even then, right as you get onto the power, the track dips away as you head down the hill towards Graham Hill Bend. And Graham Hill Bend slightly off camber as well. It's a very tricky corner. It's a very deceiving corner as well. Very easy to understeer there. And then we mentioned earlier, Surtees, it gets narrow towards the apex. It is climbing and you're trying to steer left as well. That gets a little bit of blind apex going through as well. And then you head your way onto Pilgrim's Drop, which, well, Pilgrim's Drop, kind of clue in the name, is very, very bumpy as you head towards Hawthorne Bend. And you start climbing again as then you head towards Stirlings, which has a little bit of camber. So I'm going to say, yeah, Druids is probably your flattest part of the circuit. And even then, that's after the hefty climb up Pilgrim's Rise and right slap bang in the middle of the hill going down towards Graham Hill Bend. A track that really will test the suspension and just the mindset of these drivers tonight.
Yeah, it certainly will. Just getting a bit of news and understanding that our driver walkout might not be happening because there might be a couple issues down at the World Pro Racing Arena. But we are getting word that we are going to be getting a chance to interview, or we'll be seeing drivers getting the chance to be interviewed a little bit later on. So we'll try and bring that to you as soon as we possibly can. So that hopefully we can get to in the next couple of moments. But, Kieran, these drivers are all now thinking about practice and what they can really glean from the final stages of practice and into qualifying as well. We have no idea of the conditions and how the conditions are going to be when they're out there. It's one of the few things where racing, especially on Assetto Corsa Competizione, conditions can be very unpredictable. They can have dry conditions, wet conditions, somewhere with a balance in between. And that balance in between sometimes can be a little bit of a challenge. So when you're going into a race and you don't quite know what sort of conditions you're going to expect, it's a little bit easier sometimes when you're racing in the real world. You can wake up on a morning, you can look up out at the sky and see, oh, look, clear skies, we're going to have a dry race. But here, it's like you can't necessarily do that. You've got to jump into the car. It's like, right, what are the conditions? Wet, right. Now we need to work on a wet, how we're going to drive in the wet, or what are the conditions? Dry, good. We've done most of our practice in the dry.
Yeah, that final practice session is the last bastion where you can make a mistake and get away with it. Once quali starts, then that's where that little bit of leniency from your side and from the sim side starts to fade away. Quali is really based on that one lap, that one golden lap you can pick out and put in front. And as you said, Jake, it's a part of it where drivers won't know the weather conditions until they jump in and are really thrown into the deep end. Now, if it's lovely and dry and lovely sunny weather, then, well, your quid's in, really, because you know that, well, I can attack every single corner as perfectly as I possibly can, like I've practiced. But then if it starts to rain, if there's a little bit of weather condition during the races, of course, then that really will test the drivers of, well, how much wet weather testing have you done? Of course, with sim racing, you get to practice wet weather driving at any point. You don't have to wait for a rainy day. You don't have to wait for the weather conditions to come to you. You can set them up how you like. So that comes down to the question to the drivers: how much practice do they put in those wet weather conditions? And I wonder if that varies from track to track, depending on where the track is in terms of its own sim climate. That might be something that hands in. Would you put in a lot of wet weather practice for Mount Panorama, say? Or would you mainly go for dry running? Because, you know, Southern Hemisphere at this sort of time of year, it's starting to get a little bit warmer now.
It is, and of course, because of that, their winter is our summer, and vice versa when it comes to Northern Hemisphere and some Southern Hemisphere. So you always have to keep that in the back of the mind. But I'm sure right now that these drivers are all looking around and thinking, okay, we've got pace or we've not got pace, and you're trying to sort of feel out, okay, how am I compared to the rest of the drivers? There'll be drivers who set themselves certain targets of where I want to be at the end of lap 1, at the end of lap 3, at the end of lap 5, at the end of the race. So they've got all those targets to think about here right now. So that's going to be worth keeping in focus. But I believe now at this point in time, we're going to jump down towards the World Pro Racing Arena. I believe Justin is down there somewhere having a little bit of a chat with all of the drivers, and I believe we're going to have that opportunity to listen to him and some of the drivers in terms of what they are going to be able to conduct and to understand. I'm looking forward to racing action. I'm sure all of you are going to have that chance to really enjoy that as well here, ladies and gentlemen, and hopefully down there at the World Pro Racing Arena we will have Justin down there with a little bit of a chance. Kieran, I tell you what, I can't wait. It's been a long build-up, but here we are. Here's Dean Vella, and he'll be certainly looking for as much as he possibly can here today in terms of his opportunities out there and the way he hopes to be racing. And there is Justin with him right now.
I hope you can hear me, first of all. Dean Vella next to me. I think you saw him quite enough now. He's literally flying. You're flying, right?
More or less.
Okay. He's currently with 143 points. He's quite with a gap, according actually with the gap of with Sheldon. So Sheldon has 111 points, 111, 113 or 111, something like that, meaning that still he needs to keep pushing to have that extra gap in the pole position and driver of the day. Dean, how are you feeling so far after the practice today with the McLaren at Brands Hatch?
Pretty good. I mean, as such, it's just going to be a huge fight for pole position, and then just keeping it on the track really, because it's quite a difficult circuit to overtake, so you have to be quite careful. But hopefully we get the gap a bit bigger as well at the end of the event, so that's the whole plan.
Round 4, meaning that after this round, 2 more. If you keep pushing like this, we can probably reveal the winner. So wishing you the best of luck and keep the progress going.
So taking over towards his seat then will be Dean Vella, and it will be the second one along as it has been the majority of the time, and looking to try and really put that run together here. Kieran, is going to be key for him. He's got the championship lead. He'll be able to sit in, get himself nicely situated now and away again.
Absolutely, and this is a man here, Sheldon Muscat, who will be really looking forward to this race and getting his stuck in and seeing what can happen. He's down there with Justin. Let's have a listen.
Sheldon, second position with, I still don't remember, 111 points or 113. Mind you guys, we have the wall of GPUs here. AMD just sent us the latest GPUs today, the 6750, so we put them behind us as a sort of, you know, the wall of GPUs, we're calling it today. But forgetting the GPUs, which I cannot forget because I need to try them. Dean, second position, fighting against Dean, trying, of course, I'm sure that he wants to win this because he needs, actually he wants to, not he needs, he wants to represent Malta in the FIA Motorsport Games, but there are 9 other drivers who want to represent Malta in the FIA Motorsport Games. Today, the practice, if you practiced at home enough, McLaren, Brands Hatch, is it your favorite? Tell us.
No, not at all. In fact, the car is my setup is very sketchy at the rear, so it's very oversteer, so I need to be extra careful in the race. Because here, as you can see, Brands Hatch is a very tight circuit and all you have is grass on the side. So if you try to brake on the grass, you're off. That's it.
Let's hope there will be no off-road racing. Wishing you the best of luck, Sheldon. Continue fighting for the position and maybe first position as well. Good luck.
So second position, clearly all smiles then as he makes his way over towards his sim rig. Sheldon Muscat knows that this is a pressure race out there and he's got to try and put everything on the table and get himself into the right place to say, you know what, I can challenge for that title, I can move up, I can put everything that I need to on, and maybe even getting some last few well wishes there on the mobile phone as well. Why not get a little bit more final understanding running through towards the final stages overall. So he's got that's in the back of his mind, that he's got to find some points, he's got to put himself absolutely up to that top echelon and put all of the right points together on the board. It will be 517 that's up next. Dylan De Bono didn't turn up last time out, which is going to be really crucial for him to get back in the rhythm. He's got a 1-point lead in third position, and Justin's there with him right now.
I hope you can hear me now. Position 3, we need to get the process as fast as possible now because we're a bit late. Dylan, P3, I know that you missed one, unfortunately, but you're still going to keep fighting. Today, Brands Hatch, practice session was enough. How was it?
Pretty good. Still, there's time to improve, but I think it will be good enough for the race.
But prepared? You tried on the simulator at home, or watching YouTube videos to prepare on it? I mean, McLaren is not that big of a problem to get used to it, but still, setup-wise, there are 9 other drivers who are setting up their own car, so it might be a bit difficult to, compete, or if you don't have time enough, it will be a bit of a disadvantage. But anyway, that's part of the event.
Basically, I didn't have enough time to practice, but I'm quite happy with the time that I had, with the pace that I have at the moment, and I will see during the races. Obviously, the times they will speak for themselves.
P3, Dylan, the first time competing in this championship, actually the first national championship for him, and probably the first competitive as well championship. So, wishing him the best of luck. P3 is not a joke. Let's hope that maybe you'll fight against Dean and Sheldon. Best of luck.
Has done on one occasion already, did so round 2 of the championship at the Nürburgring, back-to-back second positions there. Really showcased just how quick he was. And the no-shoes approach then, Kieran, to sim racing.
It's a more common approach than you realise. It's catching on, and one person that'll be trying to catch Dylan De Bono in this race and in this championship is Nigel Mifsud. I believe he will be down with Justin to have a chat. Justin.
Nigel, P4, another newcomer in this championship, so we're happy about it, having new drivers, local drivers, that we're increasing the community and actually the competitive scene in Malta. Nigel, so far, not the previous rounds. Today, Brands Hatch, McLaren, setup, practice was enough. Tell us.
Enough practice. I also had some time to put in some practice at home. The setup I'm quite happy with. Pace-wise, I'm where I expected to be, just behind the top 3, with a healthy gap to 5th place. So, I mean, I'll try to push as much as possible and challenge the top 3, and especially in qualifying, and I hope to have a clean race.
Wishing you the best of luck. I know and I'm sure that you're practicing a lot, as in, focusing a lot more than practicing. So, wishing you the best of luck, because you deserve higher positions. Best of luck.
Thanks. Thank you.
So Nigel Mifsud then will make his long walk over towards his rig. Number 3, he will go with. Sit in, get himself the opportunity and understanding. Everyone on very, very similar equipment then, and trying to give as much as they can. Now here comes the driver who doesn't have a sim rig at home, has to come to the World Pro Racing Arena to get practice in order to find that pace. Andrea Rizzo down there, of course, with Justin.
Mr. Rizzo, the guy that doesn't have a simulator, I think by now the whole population of Malta knows, but jokes, the whole world probably, because we're broadcasting globally. Jokes apart, Rizzo always practicing when he comes here on the day, meaning that it's more difficult for him. Today, setup-wise, McLaren, Brands Hatch, temperature is not that high. It is quite cold, 17 if I'm not mistaken, 15 now, so it's colder. Today, how was it?
Well, it's good. I'm, as usual, mid-pack, following the aliens, Maltese aliens.
We call them aliens for those that do not know what does alien mean. Means that they are more than pro. They find every tiny bit to gain that tenth of a second. But Rizzo is the guy that always pushing right now mid-pack, but I'm sure that maybe today or the next rounds will be further up. Wishing you the best of luck, and hopefully we'll see you, as we said, in a better position today.
Thank you.
Cold conditions then today, Kieran, and what's that going to mean for drivers when it comes to putting qualifying and race laps together?
Well, that's going to be an issue with getting the tyres warm and getting the lap perfectly astute. You've got to be on your money to really have a chance, and someone who will be hoping to be on the money is the number 21 of Daryl Martinelli, and Justin is down with Daryl now.
Daryl still fighting as well for another position, but he's getting stuck in the middle. 6th, 7th, want to see a better time today. Are you ready?
We'll try, yes, as always.
We'll try as always, but we need more than just try. We want to push, we want to, you know, I'm not saying we're getting a podium, but we might. You might actually, not me, I'm not going to. I'm racing against the cameras right now. How was the McLaren, or how is the McLaren during the practice and with such cold weather?
It's pretty good. I mean, it gives you a bit of confidence to push also, a bit forgiving also on mistakes, but it's pretty good on this track.
Great. Since the McLaren, of course, you use it many times because it's very stable. It forgives, but still, once you're pushing out there with 9 other drivers, it's not going to forgive you. Depends your driving style. Wishing you the best of luck. Hopefully, one day we'll see you in the podium or a better position than you did before.
Yep, so Martinelli will walk over, take his rig, and then look to try and put himself into the right position on top of that. I've noticed a couple of drivers having to move their seats a little bit as they go through. Started a week later than everyone else. Trajan Pavlovsky looking to try and get a strong result out there today. He's definitely got a turn of pace for the mid-pack. Stood by with Justin.
Trajan, always here, calm, quiet, right? You see? Today, practice session, I'm not sure if you practiced or not, or you're used to the McLaren or Brands Hatch you ever tested before. How was it today? Practice so far?
Haven't really tested, but from what I've seen, it's a fun car and a fun track, so it should be a fun race.
Fun car, fun track, fun race. The best thing that he could have said. Wishing you the best of luck, and hopefully we can see you there fighting on the top. Thank you.
3 funds, Kieran. Jackpot.
Absolute jackpot, and I love the Raikkonen style interview. It means he's absolutely in the zone and ready to go for tonight's racing. Absolutely great to see as he takes a seat in the rig. Next up then is the number 14 of Gianluigi Corral, who'll be looking to try and score some vital points in the midfield battle. He's down there with Justin.
Gianluigi, he's ready with the shorts and everything. He's ready to sweat, I think. He's ready to fight. He's ready not to crash, of course. Hopefully not this time. He's ready to, that's what I'm feeling today. He's ready to fight. Literally, look at his, you know, I don't know what you call them right now because I'm...
Chest, maybe?
Chest? No, I call them something else. I cannot say it here. I was going to call you Sheldon. Gianluigi, I know that you had various accidents or incidents, crashes. Today, preparation, I'm sure that you didn't practice, for sure. How is the McLaren and the track with such temperature, which is 15, 17-ish?
Well, the track, according to the car, is very well. The car is very balanced. We don't need too much change on the normal setup, so we are sure that I'm gonna do a good result if nothing weird is gonna happen again. You know. But as I said, I like the track, I like the car. I do all my best to have the maximum result that I can.
He's ready today. His literally his appearance, his character changed suddenly, literally. So I think today he's going to do a good one. Let's hope. Wishing you the best of luck.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Chances then available for a lot of drivers as he will take to his sim rig and be one of the last drivers actually to get accustomed and situated. All the drivers waiting then for effectively everyone to be ready and situated before they can take themselves off then towards a practice. And Goran Andreevski will be certainly hoping for a little bit better luck out there right now on the green supermarket walk-in as he's hoping that his result is there. And the nice hat on there, Justin, for him.
Mr. Goran representing Mr. Green. So thanks, of course, Mr. Green for supporting Goran, helping them to, you know, getting into the world of virtual racing. Of course, there's a fee to join our championship, and thanks to such companies, they are supporting him in financially in this championship. Goran, it's nice, the green. The green. It's not the green that I love green, and the green is green. I have no idea which type of green I'm calling.
It can relax you.
So the green is actually a supermarket selling vegetables and stuff like that. So of course that's why it's green. Jokes apart, McLaren, Brands Hatch, cold weather. How was it?
Well, it was tricky, as the other drivers tell also. You need to be very precise on this track. And if you are trying to be like more confident, you can go easily slow. And if you push a little, you can go little off the track. So we need to be careful.
Yeah, I say it many times. Slow is fast, not super slow. Meaning that you have to be, you know, calm, patient, and find that moment to overtake or do your thing. Wishing you the best of luck. Hopefully we see another good race, both race 1 and race 2. That's why you're here. You're competing to represent our country, but you're here also to give us a show. And those two out there, the commentators, Jake and Kieran, are there to put a colorful commentary because of your driving skills. So wishing you the best of luck.
Thank you. Thank to them, to everyone.
Great.
I don't quite know what's more colourful, his hat or my shirt right now, but I'm sure we're going to get some great racing coming along then very, very soon. But the conditions, I think, were the big talking point there, and we saw that quite a bit with the interviews, Kieran. It's that all of these drivers have the same sort of understanding. We like the conditions as they are. We feel like we can go quick. You can go really quick in these cold conditions, but here's the issue. The moment you make one mistake, tires are going to cool off. When the tires cool off, you've got no grip. No grip, no speed, no downforce, no downforce, even less grip. It's a spiral at that point, and you really need to be pretty much on it from the beginning and, crucially, make no mistakes.
Yeah, that sounded like a real snowball of problems, just getting bigger and bigger as it rolled down the hill. Yeah, it just absolutely concertinas into that negative effect. Negative effect leads to the negative effect, and that causation just gets bigger and bigger. But of course, with the cooler track temperature, it will mean the tires take a little longer to warm up, but in theory they should be a little easier to keep within their optimum temperature range. So it might have a little bit of an effect that way. So in terms of qualifying, we might see that drivers have to take it and maybe extra couple of laps to make sure the tires are up to temperature. When it comes to the race, though, once they've gone through their little bit of a pace lap, they can try and get some temperature into the tires, at least for Paddock Hill Bend, where you really will need at least some temperature in the tires before you descend down the fall towards Pilgrim's Rise back up towards Druid. So you will need some tire temperatures for then. So I'm interested to see how this all plays out, because if it means that the drivers have an easier time of managing the tire temperatures and making sure that temperature is in the optimum window for the tires to make sure that they get the optimum grip, then we should see drivers be maybe slightly more aggressive and willing to take a little bit of temperature in the tires as they try and be a little bit more aggressive, try and leave their braking later. I'm intrigued to see how the track temperature will play a part in these two races upcoming later tonight.
I am intrigued as well. I'm sure everyone at home has been very intrigued in terms of how they're going to be dealing with what they have to today. But I'm sure as well what will be worth keeping in mind is that pace lap, and there'll be 2 pace laps for the 2 races. So you'll get a pace lap in race 1, a pace lap in race 2. But not only is it a full pace lap, Kieran, it is also a pace lap under a speed limit, which does make life even more difficult in terms of heating back up the tyres.
It does. I mean, if you're not going quickly, then you can't actually put the heat into the tyres. So maybe at that speed, you need to focus on the brakes. I mean, the brakes are going to be an integral part in the early stages of this race. If you've got enough heat into the brakes, you can really launch an attack in towards Druids on the very first lap compared to others who might not have had a chance to put proper heat into the brakes. That also being said, you do need heat into your brakes, because if you don't have that and you hit the anchors at your normal braking point, well, actually, it's going to take you longer to stop, and you might actually feel the brakes fade away if they get too hot during the race. So it comes as a real balancing act of temperature management. Brakes really aren't affected by the track temperature. They're affected by how aggressive you are with the brakes and how much and how often you lock up. You've got to manage those as well. And trying to warm them up with a speed limit over your head, as you say, not the easiest thing to do in the world.
I would say that this track is more brake intensive, I would say, than quite a few others. And what I'd also say is that there are a lot of medium speed corners around, which is only going to need the light dab of the brakes as you go around. And how important is it between a driver who's good, for example, and a driver who's great in terms of getting that rotation in the car through the corners, which is something that is very easy in principle, but the art of trail braking and that sort of karting technique really does open up a wealth of possibility.
I mean, yeah, you've summed it up there. It is an art. So you have to master it in order to get the best out of the brakes and the tyres and keep them in that optimum range, when other drivers may not be able to do similar. As you say, there are plenty of medium speed corners, and they're probably one of the worst corners to have if you're trying to manage the brake temperatures, because yes, you have to slightly dab the brakes in order to get the car turned in, but you're not actually keeping the temperature in the brakes. So when you go through all those right-handers and you get to Sheens and Sterlings, you've got to remember that the brakes have had plenty of opportunity to actually cool down. So you might not have the same braking power you had when you were going up towards, say, Druids or towards Surtees. That is one that will catch the drivers out. Luckily, though, for the drivers towards Sterlings, there is a little bit of helpful camber towards the apex, so you can actually chuck the car in a little bit harder than anywhere else on the circuit. And you're just hoping then that the camber does save you and just help to warm up the brakes just a little bit towards the front end of the lap, which is always helpful.
Hopefully, in the next couple of moments, we will be able to bring ourselves then over to trackside action and see just exactly what is going on at this point in time. We'd love to bring you all of that in the moment, and we'll get those to you as soon as we possibly can. But at least at this moment here, Kieran, this is about understanding conditions, understanding where you are in the championship, on the track, who you're racing against, what sort of ability you have to go and make what happens happen. But the big key to this Malta National Championship is that this is a sprint championship. It's 20 minutes per race, which means you do not have a lot of time when it comes to racing action to really stamp your authority on a race. You've got maybe here today 15 laps plus in order to really sort of work out, okay, this is where I need to be, this is where all of the pace is and what I've got to understand. So really, the first 5 minutes are just the feeling out process. That leaves you 10 to 15. You're trying to keep yourself afloat. And then it's the last 5 minutes where, okay, I've now got to go and make something happen.
It's a hectic 20 minutes coming up for the drivers twice over. That also means, though, as well, if you do make a mistake, there is not a lot of time to recover yourselves, compose yourselves, and get back onto the track. And well, if you've lost about 8 or 10 seconds, that's a long old gap to make up in such a short amount of time. So it really does beckon its call. You've got to be fast. You've got to be consistent. You have to keep mistakes down to a minimum, because one mistake can cost you a couple of positions in this sprint environment.
It can cost you time, and I'm sure that drivers understand how important that time is to be found. Kieran, what's your predictions then going into qualifying in the race? Who do you think the favourite is, and who do you think is going to be out there scoring the most points?
Oh, well, Dean Vella, I mean, he hasn't qualified lower than second so far this season. It's going to be tough to knock him off the perch. But I'm going to have to say, Sheldon Muscat, I don't know, there's something about Sheldon tonight. He looks relaxed. He looks in the zone. I think I'm going to back Sheldon tonight.
Think you're going to back Sheldon? Well, I'm going to back Dean Vella, and that's going to be good. Justin Mifsud is down at the World Pro Racing Arena. He's managed to catch up with Michele Magro out there, the Malta Esports Association president. Justin.
Thank you, Kieran. Thank you, Jake. Yes, finally he had the time to come over. No, actually he didn't have the time, but he made it. Something that was very hard. He will explain quite well about how the Malta Esports Association began. Michele Magro, the president, who, you know, working for the whole esports community, doing the best for all the organizations, all the players, all the streamers, locally, especially even when they go abroad representing our country. Michele, thank you for your time. Thank you for what you're doing as the president. I know that you don't like it to be called the president, but he's the president. You're the one putting your time, putting your effort there. I know that you don't have much time apart from, you know, the work that you have in esports, which is part of our life, but he's a daddy now. Yes. So that takes a lot of time from our lives. So it's something that you need to treasure because they grow up so fast. I know that, I can say it myself. But today is about Michele. Michele, how the Esports Association started, how easy it is, even from certain organizations, from clubs, from, you know, I know what you're pushing for. Esports is a sport. Tell us a very quick one.
So we started a couple of years ago, and in just last May, we actually launched the association formally, and we're working very hard to push for government recognition. There's a lot of things that we want to accomplish within the Maltese esports, and that is making sure that the scene is more professional. There are plenty of opportunities for enthusiasts to actually push forth and actually compete abroad and make a name for ourselves as a country, but also create an economy around esports itself. Make esports sustainable. Even though we're a small country, we still have a lot to offer, and there's a lot to be done, and we're just there to push and to help organizations like WPR and others that are members of the association, and even those that are not members of the association, to actually realize their potential.
As I said, a very quick one. Michele is a lawyer, so he knows how to, you know, put those words simple and clean, the first few lines that are the most catchy, so you understand everything, right? Yeah. Well, you said the truth, it came from the heart, because what we do here in Malta, especially, we do it from our heart. As you, the viewers, probably know how we started as WPR from zero, from a garage, then we're in a facility now. So it is something that such association, including the government, which we cannot miss the government, who's supporting all the local organizations. So Michele, I don't know if you want to add anything out there, because you're being viewed from anywhere in the world, thanks to all our partners, including TVM as well. Your message out there for people who think that Malta is small, or the Maltese are not capable of doing or being part in esports as an athlete, as a professional, as someone behind the scenes, like we're doing here, or the person behind the camera. Simple message before we continue to the qualifying.
There's always so much to do. It's just a matter of passion, hard work, and everyone can achieve their dreams. We can get there. So even though we have our challenges, we keep on working towards that goal. And may I just say, what an incredible opportunity these guys have here, playing on the best hardware, driving, and having the opportunity to actually qualify and represent their country in the FIA games. That is nothing to be scoffed at. It's one of the biggest opportunities anyone interested in esports and in sim racing, and even in motorsport itself, to have that honor and that opportunity. So treasure it, guys. There's a lot to play for.
He mentioned one thing. It's a dream. Nobody won ever here the national championship, so a dream will definitely come true. Thank you, Mike. Sorry, not Mike. Mike had to come. Michele, for your time. Thanks to all the drivers that are competing here, but we need to go to the qualifying. On to you, Jake and Kieran.
We absolutely do, and it's going to be an all-important battle when it comes to qualifying. And we just saw in the background drivers, and the amount of focus they had in the background. Dylan De Bono, I think, was really having a look, triple screen setup that they have there, Kieran, really having a scour around the track and looking for those breaking points.
It's so easy to get so immersed, especially with triple screens around you. You just get teleported and catapulted straight into the action. So absolutely great to see, and does really help where if you look to your left, oh, there's a bit of track. If you look to your right, oh, there's a bit of track there. Really does help as there's Andrea Rizzo, just as we were talking about in the build-up. That grass is never far away, and he's found the of Armco barrier there just on the exit, and there's Dean Vella kissing that grass on the exit. This is more what we're talking about, the millimetrically perfect positioning that it takes hundreds of hours to master. You see Dean Vella there in this qualifying session nailing it so far, and at the moment he's top of the tables there, Jake.
He is, and the track says it's fast, and well, Dean Vella is pretty fast at the moment. 0.4 of a second clear of Dylan De Bono at this point in time, crossing the line then with that time. That was a 1:57.9 out lap then, and looking to try and really master as much as possible. Back up the hill then towards turn 2 at Druids here. This long right trying to set up and in through the corner, very much diamonding off that section of track before lisking down the hill towards Graham Hill Bend, turn 3. Let's take it from the driver's eye perspective then, going along the Cooper Straight towards Surtees Corner, turn number 4, out on track. This long left-hander, crest the rise off the exit, very easy to spin the car up, and it took about 3 attempts there for Dean to put the power down. This is a scruffy lap as Sheldon Muscat moves up to second fastest.
He now goes down the hill, down Pilgrim's Drop, and then in towards Hawthorne Bend. A long right-hander with just a little bit of curbing on the left-hand side, down the Derek Minter Straight and in towards Westfield Bend as there's someone slightly going rallycrossing. The rallycross track was a little bit further back, but now we head away through Dingledale, through in towards Sheens. It's a full commitment corner, that one where you can't see the apex in the cockpit. Then we make our way in towards Stirling's. We then get back onto the power again, using that minimal curve there is on the outside, on towards Clearways before we head through this long right-hander of Clark Curve, which climbs, then drops, and then you climb again as you make your way then on towards the Brabham Straight, and that is a lap, a quick one at that, of Brands Hatch, and the 1:23.5 is the time to beat. His last lap, 24.7. No doubt that little bit of a moment coming out of Surtees will have added to that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it would have done, and it's going to take a little bit of work to get there, but the gaps are pretty close here today. Dylan De Bono currently in 3rd, and you look around at his times, he's looking really good. You've also got a really close scrap, 4th through 7th, with Mifsud, Andrzejewski, Rizzo, and Martinelli all there within about, I would say, as Nigel Mifsud has just jumped up then with himself about 8.5 of a second off of pole. So he's done really well that time, but there's only a 10th between 5th and 7th as De Bono crosses the line with a 23.980. That's good enough to improve time, but not position out on track. He's half a 10th behind Sheldon Muscat. So it's all about finding that time and just trying to get as much as you can out of it. I believe at this moment he's thinking about it. No, he's going to abandon the lap. 4.5 minutes to go. I'd say you've probably got enough time to use one out lap, one flying lap to get the tyres up to temperature, and then a second lap to really put the pace together.
You can see on the circuit map as well, there's about 3 cars here that are very much close together, glued together, if you like. I think it's the 13 there of Andrea Rizzo. You got the 22 as well of Martinelli, and there is Nigel Mifsud, who takes to the grass on the right-hand side, abandoning that lap and making his way back to the pit lane. There is Sheldon Muscat, 2nd so far, just under 3.5 tenths away from the current provisional pole sitter in Dean Vella, and with only just over 4 minutes on the clock. Let's see him now attack this middle part of the lap as we head our way through now in towards the left-hander of Stirling's, making our way on towards Clearways. And then this is a little bit of respite before you then make your way on towards Clark Curve. It's definitely a track, this one, Jake, that doesn't give you a lot of rest. The best one you probably have is Pilgrim's Drop. And even then, you're so wary of how narrow that track does become.
Yeah, you absolutely are. It's where the track falls away from what was the original design, the Indy layout, as it's known here at Brands Hatch, but the full Grand Prix layout of the circuit is the longer version that goes out. Dylan de Bono currently in 3rd position, just going out then onto an outlap, I do believe, and trying to get as much pace as possible. Everyone pretty much congregated together as well, which is pretty interesting to see. There's not many drivers trying to look for a bit of open space, and there are only 9 drivers out there on track, so there is a lot to work with. The one driver missing today is Kirsten Abeja, so he's not here today looking to try and score points. So this is a free kick back, essentially, when you talk about championship efforts, when you consider where Kirsten is overall in comparison to everybody else out there. He finds himself 6th in the championship, and he could be down as far as 7th, 8th, potentially even 9th or 10th come the end of racing today here, Kieran.
Yeah, that is so critical that, you know, you have to turn up to as many as possible, because even if you're not turning up, the point system is so weighted towards success in the series that by missing around, you are going to miss out on a very much a healthy handful of points, no matter where you're finishing, as long as you do make it to the line. As we see Dylan de Bono then making his way through the final couple of corners, just over 4 tenths away from Dean Vella. He'll make his way across the line now, and is that going to be an improvement? No, 24-2 from de Bono last time out, so he's still clearly going for it. He's got 2 more attempts if he's got the fuel for it.
If he's got the fuel for it, and I'm just looking at the car in front of him, I believe it's Sheldon Muscat, so that will help. There is Andrea Rizzo in the bright red, almost pinkish there, McLaren, looking to dive through at Hawthorne Bend and trying to use all of that circuit. Not much curb to use with on the exit, and a really interesting opening to the corner at Westfield Bend, because that track really does pivot out and open out, which gives you that angle to go in and attack it, but it is so easy to take too much through there.
It really, really is. It's a track that really rewards how committed you are through these corners, but the moment you go slightly off the line, that is where the track bites back, as Sheldon Muscat here looking to put the power down and now make his way on through Dingle Dell and then towards Sheens, which is a very much a high commitment corner, because you just cannot see the apex there. You're just turning in and hoping that you've got your angles right as we make our way on towards Clearways and Clark Curve for another lap here. Watching Sheldon Muscat as we head into the final minute of the session.
Final minute. Andrea Rizzo has just jumped up 5th fastest, 1.7 seconds off of the pace of the leaders. Muscat then over the line, 24.6. That will definitely not do it right now, with the back stepping out then through the first corner. That should be it. Martinelli will go to the pits. That will be his qualifying then. Done and dusted then. Dylan de Bono with a 24.2 as he went through. This might be the only chance he has left. The last thing he'd want, though, is Sheldon Muscat not on the cleanest lap in the world to help with. Yellow flags out then. That section of road will not help the matters that are there, with the 13 then going back in, sorry, the 22, I believe it was, going back into the pits. Maybe Andrea Rizzo as well in a little bit of a spot of bother. But now as they run through 3, 2, 1, now is when the checkered flag will come out. So any drivers then making a push to the line will be important. And there are about 6 or 7 out there who could try and make something happen. Jean-Louis Carrao's qualifying over and done with. But moving forward, it will be the 54 who'll be first there. De Bono's going to lose it going up through the Sheen curve. So his qualifying effort is all but done. Over the line goes Vella. He doesn't improve on his time. One driver's going to pull over to the right-hand side. That's the 111 who will not improve, of Nigel Mifsud. But here will come Sheldon Muscat over towards the line. I'm not expecting an improvement then from him. And as he crosses, it's a 24-1. He did well to gather it back up after the issue then at the opening corner, but that would have just about done that. There's only one driver out there who can representatively put a time in on the board, and that is Trajan Pavlovsky out there. But Kieran, it's pretty much as settled can be. An extra 2 points in the pocket for Dean Vella.
Yeah, he'll be happy with that one there. And Sheldon Muscat, as you said, getting the tail all sorts of sideways, coming back into Paddock Hill Bend. And as you say, he did well to gather up the time, what could have been for that clean lap, as we see Trajan Pavlovsky make his way towards the line to complete qualifying. Does he manage to get himself a position? No, he doesn't. He will stay in P9 there. And that is qualifying done and dusted. Dean Vella with a healthy 2 points after that one.
I will correct myself. It is 1 point. So I had a double check at it. So he'll get a point for pole position. But that was just because so early on, every driver who was getting those points was also getting driver of the day. But we're going to step aside for one moment here when it comes to World Pro Racing's coverage of the Malta National GT3 Esports Championship of 2022. Race 1 comes up on the other side of this.
Niġu bil-PC tagħna u l-monitor fih daqsiex, għas missieri ma kien jifilħu. Ħanerġa' ninsa għax weħlet li ma nistax kif ukoll. Wasal iż-żmien li nħolqu programm dedikat tal-esports. Programm fejn ħanitkellmu fuq ħafna affarijiet, edukazzjoni, saħħa, l-industrija tax-xogħol, però l-iktar ħaġa importanti li nippromovu l-esports pajjiżna għaliex intom kapaċi. Mela tinsewniex, esports plus.
start.
Niġu bil-PC tagħna u l-monitor fih daqsiex, għas missieri ma kien jifilħu. Ħanerġa' ninsa għax weħlet li ma nistax kif ukoll. Wasal iż-żmien li nħolqu programm dedikat tal-esports. Programm fejn ħanitkellmu fuq ħafna affarijiet, edukazzjoni, saħħa, l-industrija tax-xogħol, però l-iktar ħaġa importanti li nippromovu l-esports pajjiżna għaliex intom kapaċi. Mela tinsewniex, esports plus.
We're just moments away then from the start of the first race, and all important points on the line. It was Dean Vella who put the fastest time in qualifying. There wasn't much that anyone could say or do to argue against that, but it is a closer pack than we've had in previous races here, Kieran. You've got 3 drivers all within a second behind. You've got Sheldon Muscat, Dylan De Bono, and Nigel Mifsud as well. This is not going to be as plain as sailing gets.
Not really at all, and it's going to be great to see how it all unfolds. You've had your chance to grab your popcorn, come and sit with us, and let's have the next 2 races unfold before us and see what on earth happens from here.
20 minutes then will be put on the clock, and anything can happen within a span of 20 minutes. So they've got a lot of work to do. For those who are brand new to World Pro Racing and are looking at a chance of trying to get some racing together yourself, we can confirm that World Pro Racing Sprint Series qualifying registration, or qualifiers as they are, is now open at wpr.gg/events. You can go sign yourself up then for that and get yourself an opportunity to race in a weekly series with the World Pro Racing Sprint Series back again for the first time in a little bit, and it's very nice to have that back. But focus will remain with the multinational GT3 Esports Championship for 2022 here, Kieran. And cold conditions right now, it's going to be down to that first lap. What we have noticed with Dean Vella is that the only way you can really shake him out of that race lead is if you make a move on the opening lap. You've got to unsettle him early.
Yeah, that's going to be a tactic that drivers would have been familiar with now. As they've been racing alongside each other, you start to learn the habits and the tactics that work against some drivers, and more importantly, what doesn't work. But what does seem to work is the early unsettling of Dean Vella. If you can get past him on the first lap and try and defend your way to a victory, it's very hard for Dean Vella to just get back into that rhythm very, very quickly. He'll be on you like nothing else, but actually making that pass, if you can unsettle early, that will work in your favor. On the other hand, though, for Dean Vella, he'll know that the first lap is critical. If he can build that gap early, he can really build on a gap lap after lap after lap. As he's shown us previously, he's so consistent, very rarely makes those errors that makes him fall back into the train. If he can get that little bit of a gap on the first lap, he's already trying to get one hand home and dry.
One hand home and dry is certainly what he is hoping for. But what about the mid-pack as they go through? There's a little look at the World Pro Racing Arena. Everyone looking to try and sit and get themselves ready then for an opportunity as they go through. Everyone trying to put themselves in the best position and mindset to go forward. So the first thought that comes into mind is, okay, this has been a lot longer of a wait than what they've normally had over the course of racing action over an evening. So they're already a little bit on edge, and you've got a cold track to go along with it. So do you feel like there's going to be a bit of nerves, a bit of anticipation, the fact they have had to be a little bit more patient today than they have been on previous weeks?
Yeah, of course. If you're doing something that you know is like clockwork, it happens at this time, and then there's a slight delay. Yeah, it can start to manifest in your mind. But with these top drivers here, they won't let that get to them. They'll be in the zone. They'll just make sure they go through all of their race prep, do all of their little bit of bits of luck that they like to do. Maybe get in from the left-hand side of the cockpit, or put the hands on the wheel a certain way when you press a certain button. Trust me, these are all sort of parameters that these drivers will go through. They're pre-race rituals, if you like, to make sure that they have the racing gods, the sim racing gods on their side and please them towards a race. But as you say, yes, can be a little unsettling, but for the top level drivers, they'll know that delays happen. Changes in schedule can happen. As long as they stay in the zone, they should be fine. And as we head towards the opening race of the evening, the anticipation is building, the tension is palpable, and especially between those two on the front row. 4 tenths separated them in qualifying, but not a lot's going to separate them down towards turn one.
No, you're absolutely right. They'll be pretty much as even as Kiel gets as they all run through and look to try and put themselves into the best position that they have there. So everyone's hoping that they get the best result, that they can push themselves through. And once everyone gets themselves ready and are situated, we will have that chance to take ourselves over towards that racing action. But they are looking at places where, okay, where does it settle out? It is very easy to make contact, though, at turn one at Paddock Hill Bend because it is such an inviting entry. It's really a late apex through turn one, which catches everyone out. You get about 2/3 through the corner and you make the tap. I'm sure there's many compilations of taps that have gone on through Paddock Hill Bend, and quite often with the way that it drops down the hill, one small tap's enough to send a car rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. And the gravel trap at the track there in motorsport is enough to roll the car, especially if it's, not specifically designed. If it's not wide enough to take the G-force and the change of direction, you do see cars roll there. But luckily with these McLarens, that's not so much of a case in Assetto Corsa Competizione. But what is a case is, as you've said, the first corner, slightly colder tyres than they may be familiar with on a hot lap, for example. They'll have slightly colder brakes going in towards turn one. And that all leads to one thing: understeer. And that is all going to be a problem if you're on the outside line heading in towards turn one. You are going to be frantically looking to your right and hoping the driver next to you is not carrying too much speed through. Otherwise, you might find yourself riding the curb, or even worse, you might even dipping a couple of wheels into the gravel. But let's hope for a clean start for all of our drivers here, heading down in towards turn 1. And let's hope they've all taken that motorsport lesson in, the race is not lost. It's not won on lap 1, but it can certainly be lost.
Yeah, it certainly can. And we've seen it many times before, and we'll see it many times again, that drivers are going to be pushing for an absolute limit, and they don't want to push over that too early. But what would be important to say, though, Kieran, is it's a lot easier to recover from a mistake on lap 1 than it is to recover a mistake on the final lap.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're going to make a mistake, make it early so you give yourselves the most time possible to rectify that mistake and make up the lost time. And that's going to be on the important side. The only solution to that is to not make the mistake in the first place, which is very, very demeaning to say and very sort of, not a helpful thing to say. But unfortunately, it is true. You are going to get the best results by not making any mistakes. That is what's going to separate some of this field as we head towards the first race. And that is just a fact. If you can keep your mistakes to a minimum, keep it clean going through turn 1, that's half the battle done there. The rest of it will be down to your pace, your consistency, and how well you can manage the traffic, how well you can get an overtake done too. And such a narrow circuit with not many overtaking opportunities to really speak of. As we said, qualifying position, very critical. Dean Vella's done all he can so far tonight to grab that pole position. He, in theory, has the best chance of making it in towards turn 1 and try and make sure he drives the widest McLaren Forkham has ever seen.
Absolutely, and we should be seeing that. There are a couple of drivers then down at the far end. Andreevski then with the green hat. You got Martinelli there in the number 4. And having a little look then at a couple messages there. You got Nigel Mifsud over there in number 3. And the number 2 is Sheldon Muscat over there. So he's got his eyes focused on what he needs to do moving forward. And he'll be certainly keeping himself alert to the situation that is there in front of him. And he'll be hoping that come the end of the race, he'll be in position number 1. Scoring those all-important points. Now, when it comes to making an overtake, you're going to need about a second's worth of pace to push yourself right up to the very top, as I believe Justin there's going to try and give as much help as he possibly can to make sure everyone is okay and all conditions are as even as possible for everyone as they go out there and try and put everything all nicely together. So hopefully once everything is all sorted and situated, we had a couple of rounds ago, I should say, there was a cable issue over with Sheldon Muscat. So it's not too untoward that we do get technical issues here, Kieran, when it comes to racing, especially in the LAN events. Sometimes, something goes wrong. That's just the nature of the beast that they have going through. So it is important that these drivers all look to situate themselves properly, knowing that their racing is going to be going forward and everyone's going to be trying to get together as quickly as possible and try and make 20 minutes feel like 10 minutes in terms of the way that they drive.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so much easier said than done to just jump in and really get yourselves underway. Yeah, these issues do happen not only in sim racing, but in motorsport as well. You will have technical issues as well. But, obviously the team down at World Pro Racing, Justin, as we saw there, credit off the mark, quick off the mark to be to the driver's aid. And we're looking to see what sort of racing action we can have here tonight. And, Jake, we sort of did the pre-race predictions, in fact, the pre-quali predictions as well, where I'm back in Sheldon Muscat and you're back in Dean Vella. You must be sitting very happy in your corner at the moment. Dean Vella's on pole position.
I am. And I'd quite like to stay here, if I'm perfectly honest, because you look at the sort of form book and you understand what makes a driver like Dean Vella so good is that he can qualify the car fantastically. And when he gets out to a lead of over 1 second, 2 seconds, he becomes uncatchable. And that sometimes as a trait is very, very difficult to overcome out there in terms of the way that drivers go out there and race. So you look at someone like Dean Vella, who has that natural skill of leading from the front and not making mistakes when he's out there at the front. Just makes life so difficult for drivers behind to have to go and catch, because they're going to have to be quicker than the driver who 9 times out of 10, or at least in this case, is 3 times out of 4 being the quickest driver overall. Take a little look. Those are the drivers sat down in the pits right now, getting themselves all loaded in and ready to get themselves ready to to join the gridding process. Once they do, they will have their one pace lap to get up to speed with what this Brands Hatch circuit is capable of doing, and then get themselves going. One other little unique thing we haven't really touched upon, though, here, Kieran. Bank straight.
Bank straight, yeah, it's a tricky one. You know, we've sort of seen over the years circuits that, such as Imola, you basically call it an isn't straight because it's curved all the way around. That works the same or similar at Brands Hatch, but you're absolutely right. The Brabham Straight itself, the start-finish line, is banked slightly to the right, and that offset there really will have an effect in the drivers as they make their start. As obviously you love a flat surface to get yourselves underway, but what you'll find is when you put the power down, you're going to have one side of the car putting the power down and almost lurching the car if you're not careful. So that's something that the drivers are going to have to be wary of when they start this race. But of course, these guys have been doing the practice, they've been doing the laps, they've been putting in the hours. It's been, as you said earlier on tonight, the longest break between races. So in theory, the drivers have had the longest time possible to unwind from the last round, to put some laps in as well, really get to grips with the magic and the beauty that is Brands Hatch.
Yeah, and they know that they've got 2 races here tonight that they've got to understand, and this first race is going to be one of the most crucial ones out there. It's a tempo setter out there in terms of what you want this night to be, and with 33 points in the back pocket as a margin of lead, this first race, we know that Dean Vella is not going to lose the championship lead coming out of this race. We know that for an absolute fact. But what we also know is that drivers are never comfortable when they have a championship lead. Every driver that I've ever talked to has the championship lead, says it's never over, and it never really is until it's mathematically put to bed. But you look around and think, right, okay, how quickly can, this go to hell in a handbasket? The answer is very. It only takes 1 lapse of concentration.
It really does, and that could be the difference between getting a good amount of points and finding the wall, is that split-second mistake that will rend your race and really put a scalp in the chances of you scoring some healthy championship points. And all of that is all on paper, of course. We have a race, hopefully, coming up on, I was going to say on paper, the opposite of on paper. I'm struggling to find the synonym there, or the antonym. I'm struggling in general, Jake. I've got to be honest with you.
Well, I'm sure we're going to find some great racing nevertheless, and there's going to be a whole lot that they're going to gather from their running here. And, when it comes to this sort of championship push that they're going through, we've been talking about how it's not just about today in terms of the way they're racing, but it's also 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, when the next generation of drivers are going to come through and look to try and find the best results that they possibly can. It'll be a completely different scene from that point, but the question then has to go and be asked here, Kieran, if you build the blocks now, how good will the Maltese sim racing community be 5, 10, 15 years down the road?
Oh, absolutely. And, even in the explosion of sim racing over the last 2 years, 3 years especially, I won't say exactly why, because I think we all know why, but that explosion in itself has really got an interest in a lot of people where there was nowhere to go and nothing to do. There were more and more people trying out sim racing and more people getting absolutely hooked. And it's a case of how couldn't you get hooked with so much on offer, with so many sims out there on offer as well. One of them being Assetto Corsa Competizione, which is a fantastic simulator to go racing on. It just makes sense, and I'm excited to see what the future holds as well, and what World Pro Racing are doing here as well, trying to find the next driver from Malta to represent their country at the FIA Motorsport Games. It's that story arc that we all need after so many years of trials and tribulation, to finally have someone from Malta represented at the FIA Motorsport Games. That's what we're here to do. That's why we're here, to find out who is it going to be.
I suppose then the next question that comes along from that is the switch for this year for the FIA Motorsport games, moving away from Gran Turismo. Of course, it was on Gran Turismo Sport, was due to be hosted on Gran Turismo 7 as a platform, but due to instabilities on the platform of bringing together a racing championship, they've decided to make the switch to Assetto Corsa Competizione with an eye and a view to get back then at some point over towards Gran Turismo 7 once again, once the platform becomes more stable. Do you feel then, in terms of that sense, that Assetto Corsa Competizione challenges drivers when it comes to the FIA Motorsport games a little bit differently to what something like Gran Turismo 7 does?
Yeah, I think all sims have their quirks and positive outlooks as well. And I think what Assetto Corsa Competizione does so well is the GT side of it. Of course, it's an evolution of Assetto Corsa, which in itself is I would say, a modder's paradise. You can race pretty much anything on Assetto Corsa. But Competizione, the sort of, I guess you could say that the spin-off would be an accurate word, is solely on the GT side of things, GT3 and GT4 cars, and they really have gone all out on, you know, the handling, how the car works, and really giving you as close as you possibly can to the great GT driving experience. And you have to give them full credit because they've done a wonderful, wonderful job in how these cars react to different tracks, different surfaces. Or you name it, Assetto Corsa Competizione has probably done it pretty well.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the way that they go through and try and score as much as they can out of today, that they'll be hoping that the results that they put in right now will help them out for the finals later on in the year. So they'll be certainly hoping that when they have that stability, when it comes to Assetto Corsa Competizione, they've got that ability to go out there to attack and push themselves through. What we can say is that the race will be starting immediately after all drivers are in and ready. They've had themselves a couple of issues when it's come to the drivers loading in and getting into the right grid positions. So as effectively, we turned it off, we turned it back on again, and we'll be hopefully getting straight into racing the moment that becomes available to everyone. So we'll just keep that in mind as they all look to try and set themselves in. And by that little shake that I just saw on 5 separate screens at exactly the same time here, Kieran, I believe we're not a million miles away from getting ourselves ready for racing.
No, I don't think we are. It's been a bit of a wait, obviously, unfortunately, with those technical issues. It's a bit of a setback for us, but once we get the ball rolling, it will all be worth it, I promise you. Dean Vella starting on pole position alongside him, Sheldon Muscat, the 2 title protagonists so far this season. And let's hope that this second half of the season brings us just as much drama and just as much action as the first half did.
Yep, I hopefully will see that, and all of us will see that. So this could be everything that it needed to be, and then some here today as they go through. Sheldon Muscat then taking the headphones off, and looks like he's having himself a little bit of an issue there. So we'll wait for more confirmation then as they go and get themselves sorted. So again, still on the hold it seems, and that will be a shame if we'll be unable to bring you racing. We don't quite know exactly what the hold-up is or what the issue is, but we'll get to racing as and when it brings itself forward. And some drivers taking this opportunity to get up, stretch their legs a little bit, because they would have been sat down in that rig for a really long time, getting themselves ready and acclimatized. And a hold like this is really tough because it's almost the same as a rain delay, really, except you never know when the green flag's going to drop. Everyone's sort of just sitting there on tenterhooks waiting. They've got to keep those adrenaline levels up.
Yeah, absolutely right. And, you know, these delays can play a bit in your mind and maybe slightly unsettle you going in towards the race. But it's a great test, this one, of, you know, what you need to do in that mental capacity to keep yourself switched on, to make sure you're still in the zone and in the rhythm once the race gets going, as well as someone taking the opportunity to have a snack as well. That is a great idea. That is a great idea to have a snack right now. That is not only fuel for him, but fuel for the mind as well, heading towards the race.
I'd definitely say so. And getting an opportunity then to push forward and to make everything happen. I'm sure everyone's going to try and get themselves up and into a position as much as they can. I'm not sure whether we're taking a short break right now or not. I'm just going to get confirmation of that in the next couple of moments. But at least right now, I think these drivers are giving themselves an opportunity then to keep themselves ahead of the situation and look forward to their race. Hopefully we can get ourselves then over to that as drivers that try and give themselves their own opportunities. We're going to step aside though for one moment, and we will be back after this.
Niġu bil-pisi tagħna u l-monitor fih daqsiex għas missieri ma kien jifilħu. Ħanerġa' ninsa għax weħlet li ma nistax kif ukoll. Wasal iż-żmien li nħolqu programm dedikat tal-esports. Programm fejn ħanitkellmu fuq ħafna affarijiet, edukazzjoni, saħħa, l-industrija tax-xogħol, però l-iktar ħaġa importanti li nippromovu l-esports pajjiżna għaliex intom kapaċi. Mela tinsewniex, esports plus.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
Niġu bil-pisi tagħna u l-monitor fih daqsiex għas missieri ma kien jifilħu. Ħanerġa' ninsa għax weħlet li ma nistax kif ukoll. Wasal iż-żmien li nħolqu programm dedikat tal-esports. Programm fejn ħanitkellmu fuq ħafna affarijiet, edukazzjoni, saħħa, l-industrija tax-xogħol, però l-iktar ħaġa importanti li nippromovu l-esports pajjiżna għaliex intom kapaċi. Mela tinsewniex, esports plus.
Okay, we proceed to the start.
niġu bil-PC tagħna u l-monitor fih daqsiex għas missieri ma kien jifilħu. Ħanerġa' ninsa għax weħlet li ma nistax kif ukoll. Wasal iż-żmien li nħolqu programm dedikat tal-esports. Programm fejn ħanitkellmu fuq ħafna affarijiet, edukazzjoni, saħħa, l-industrija tax-xogħol, però l-iktar ħaġa importanti li nippromovu l-esports pajjiżna għaliex intom kapaċi. Mela tinsewniex, esports plus.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real. Apologies then, ladies and gentlemen, for what's gone on here today with the fourth round of the championship here of the Malta National GT3 Esports Championship for 2022. An issue then getting the race started. The race just would not go to its starting procedures, and as such, there's nothing we can do. The race will unfortunately be postponed from racing action today, meaning that we will not be taking part in racing today for the fourth round of the championship. Schedule will be released later on through World Pro Racing social media, so make sure you check that out over on Facebook, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or wherever you get your social media news coming through. Kieran, it is a real shame that we do have to effectively postpone racing today, but sometimes there's not much you can do. When it doesn't want to play ball, it doesn't play ball.
It is what it do. Sometimes that's the beauty of racing. So unfortunately, we have to close the curtain prematurely with, unfortunately, no racing action. But sometimes these things happen. But you know what? It just builds that excitement for that rescheduling. We get to find out when we will hopefully go racing at Brands Hatch once again.
At the very least, if we don't get a race at Brands Hatch, 1 week from today, we will be taking racing over to Paul Ricard. So make sure that you tune back in for that one, be it TVM Sport, Motorsport.tv, ESTV, the Esport Television Network, be it on Facebook, be it on YouTube, be it on Twitch, where you're watching racing action. Make sure that you keep an eye out for all that is going on. But from Kieran McGinley and myself, Jake Sperry, here with World Pro Racing, thank you very much for tuning in with us. It's a shame that we weren't able to bring you racing, but there'll be more racing later on to make sure things happen. Dean Vella still has 30-odd points in the championship, and he'll still be holding them to the next round or the next rescheduled race that'll be coming up with World Pro Racing and the Malta National GT3 Esports Championship in 2022. World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
Niġu bil-PC tagħna u l-monitor fih daqsiex għas missieri ma kien jifilħu. Ħanerġa' ninsa għax weħlet li ma nistax kif ukoll. Wasal iż-żmien li nħolqu programm dedikat tal-esports. Programm fejn ħanitkellmu fuq ħafna affarijiet, edukazzjoni, saħħa, l-industrija tax-xogħol, però l-iktar ħaġa importanti li nippromovu l-esports pajjiżna għaliex intom kapaċi. Mela tinsewniex, Esports Plus.
GT3Esports.com.
Okay, we proceed to the start.
Niġu bil-PC tagħna u l-monitor fih daqsiex, għas missieri ma kien jifilħu. Ħanerġa' ninsa għax weħlet li ma nistax kif ukoll. Wasal iż-żmien li nħolqu programm dedikat tal-esports. Programm fejn nitkellmu fuq ħafna affarijiet, edukazzjoni, saħħa, l-industrija tax-xogħol, però l-iktar ħaġa importanti li nippromovu l-esports pajjiżna għaliex intom kapaċi. Mela tinsewniex, Esports Plus.